Ας περάσουμε στο επόμενο θέμα που έχει να κάνει με το σεμινάριο που διοργάνωσε το Lobby for Cyprus στο Hellenic Center. Το σεμινάριο έθεσε ερωτήσεις σχετικά με το αν η δικοινοτική και η διζωνική έννοια αφορούν την πολυεθνική Κύπρο του σήμερα. Συντονιστής της ομιλίας ήταν ο δικηγόρος Costas Frangeskides και ομιλητές ο Dr. Coufoudakis και ο Dr. Klearchos Kyriakides. Ας παρακολουθήσουμε την παρουσίαση του συντονιστή κ. Κώστα Φραγκεσκίδη.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for attending another Lobby for Cyprus seminar at the Hellenic Centre. We're very fortunate indeed to have two excellent speakers who really need no introduction, but I will make some introductory comments and, of course, introduce them. The title for today's seminar, the Lobby for Cyprus seminar, is Are Bicommunalism and Bizonalism Redundant Concepts in the Multi-Ethnic Cyprus of Today? Now, you've probably realised that one of our speakers is not yet here. Dr. Kyriakides is on his way. He did say he would have to be a little bit late because he is lecturing at his university. But I'm sure that those of you who have heard Klearchos Kyriakides speak will know it's definitely worth waiting for him to arrive. Now, Professor Coufoudakis will speak on the bizonal federation model and the destruction of the Republic of Cyprus. Again, we are very privileged and honoured that Professor Coufoudakis is here with us. Professor Coufoudakis is Rector Emeritus at the University of Nicosia, Dean Emeritus of the College of Arts and Sciences at Indiana University, Purdue University at Fort Wayne, and Professor Emeritus of Political Science as well. He is author and editor of numerous books and has written more than 95 journals, articles and book chapters published worldwide. His books include International Aggression and Violation of Human Rights, The Case of Turkey and Cyprus, Cyprus, A Contemporary Problem and Historical Perspective. He also co-authored with Dr. Kyriakides The Case Against the Annan Plan, before the Annan Plan was put forward in 2004, and it was published by Lobby for Cyprus. So again, we're very honoured to have him with us. Before we start, I'd like to say a few introductory remarks and a little bit about Lobby for Cyprus. What do we stand for? We're a non-political human rights NGO. We were formed in 1992, and since our inception we've campaigned against the invasion, occupation, ethnic cleansing and destruction of the cultural heritage of our island, of 37% of the Republic of Cyprus, which is occupied by Turkey. Lobby believes that being independent and non-aligned has enabled us to maintain our policies and allowed us to evaluate freely the developments concerning Cyprus without any external political forces. We were founded by a number of UK-based Cypriot refugee organisations, Aios Ambrosios, Anglo Aganthou, Lapidos and Garavas, and a number of individuals as well, including our former coordinator, Kyriakos Christodoulou. Now, that we all and they all believe that any settlement cannot and should not legitimise Turkey's illegal occupation of the northern part of Cyprus. What do we stand for? We stand for and campaign around the 3 R's: the removal of all Turkish troops, repatriation of all colonists, and the return of all refugees to their homes and lands without restriction or precondition. We strongly believe that any settlement that does not guarantee the implementation of these minimum principles will lead to a bizonal confederation, i.e. two distinct and separate bodies and self-governing bodies on the island of Cyprus. We will never accept a settlement at Lobby that will create an apartheid state in Cyprus. We campaign for all Cypriots, Greek Cypriots and Turkish Cypriots, but we are made up of Greek Cypriot refugee associations. We want a united Cyprus that's in line with international law. One of the issues that always comes up, and why we have the seminar tonight, is what does this mean, a bizonal, bicommunal federation? What do the Greek Cypriots think it means? What do the Turkish Cypriots think it means? Where are we at the moment? Well, the positives are that the Republic of Cyprus had what many agreed was a highly successful 6-month presidency. That began in July 2012. So that was certainly a positive. There are obviously negatives. The banking and financial crisis that took place in the Republic, as was taking place in other parts of Europe, particularly Greece, Spain, Italy. Lost in all of this, of course, was the fact, well, some would say it's lost, that the negotiations between the Turkish Cypriot leader and the President of the Republic of Cyprus, I'm happy to say that Dr. Kyriakides is here with us now, so thank you, Klearchos. You just made it in time. Well done, thank you. Of course, the negotiations reached a stalemate in May last year, and there were a number of other factors which converged at the same time. I mentioned the Republic's presidency. Of course, Mr. Eroglu, the Turkish Cypriot leader, decided not to meet President Christofias during the EU presidency, no doubt under instruction from Turkey. Another positive was the discovery of natural gas deposits off the southern Cypriot coast. And also we've got, of course, the national elections coming up in February in the Republic of Cyprus. So all these issues converged and are converging. Negotiations may start after the elections, but Mr. Eroglu's recent statement, again, does not give us much hope. He apparently said, following the Republic of Cyprus elections, the negotiation table will be set up under the roof of the state established by the TRNC.
Στη συνέχεια στο βήμα ανέβηκε ο Dr. Coufoudakis, όπου ανέπτυξε το θέμα σχετικά με το μοντέλο της διζωνικής ομοσπονδίας και την καταστροφή της Κυπριακής Δημοκρατίας. Ας παρακολουθήσουμε ένα απόσπασμα από την ομιλία του.
I would like to thank you for coming tonight. I would like to thank Theo Theodorou, who, of course, is not here. He's in Nigeria. He called from Nigeria this morning. He said, "I'm sorry I cannot be present because, etc." Well, reality, traveling, I came in from Athens this morning too. Thanks to the Lobby for Cyprus for the invitation. And also, I'm grateful that Klearchos Kyriakides is with me tonight, because he and I, back in 2004, about this time of the year, had gotten together to speak against the Annan Plan. And here we are again, 9 years later, doing the same thing. Because unfortunately, those of you who believe in the resurrection, this is the case of a resurrection that we have had again in the last few months. We'll talk a little bit more about that. I'm also pleased to see Fanula Yiru here in the audience, because she has also devoted years and years of her life on the Cyprus issue, working the British documents, finding out details as to who did what, when, and how. She and I are in a regular email dialogue of these issues. I'm pleased that she took the time to be here tonight. Well, ladies and gentlemen, in a free and decisive, I would say, referendum back in 2004, the Greek Cypriot community, because the communities voted at that particular time, turned down a plan intended to destroy the Republic of Cyprus. That was the so-called Annan Plan version 5 that was presented in cooperation with the United Kingdom, because it was really drafted by the United Kingdom, supported by the United States, promoted by Kofi Annan, and here we are again discussing the same thing. But in a free and decisive referendum in 2004, 76% of the Greek Cypriot population rejected the plan that would have legitimized the partition of Cyprus, legitimized Turkey's intervention rights in Cyprus, would have expanded Britain's and Turkey's rights over a sovereign member of the EU. If you have questions on that, I'll be happy to discuss it, because if you have a plan of 9,000 pages, 9,000 plus pages, they had a little chapter expanding on the new rights that the United Kingdom would get in Cyprus years after independence, and that included the territorial waters, the subsoil of Cyprus and the continental shelf of Cyprus, things that the 1960 agreements never included. But of course, who reads 9,000 plus pages? And in the propaganda of the UN, these things never ever surfaced. Also, the Annan Plan would have deprived all Cypriots, Greek and Turkish, of human rights guaranteed under the European Convention. And I'm going to come back to that point because it's very important. And finally, would have legitimized the demographic changes brought about by the influx of illegitimate, illegal, basically, Turkish mainland settlers who now outnumber the native Turkish Cypriots by something like 3-to-1 ratio, and that's a conservative number. The Greek Cypriots on April 24, 2004, wisely and freely rejected the so-called bizonal, bicommunal federation model as the basis for the resolution of the Cyprus problem. But despite the overwhelming rejection of this unprecedented constitutional construct, στα ελληνικά εγώ το λέω συνταγματική σοφιστία. Oops, get excited. We were now once more confronted with a resurrected Annan Plan in an even more dangerous version of the so-called bizonal bicommunal federation. It is the result of nearly 4 years of talks by the outgoing administration of President Christofias and the Turkish Cypriot leadership under the auspices of the UN Special Representative Alexander Downer, a man that I knew very well when he was Australia's foreign minister once upon a time. And at that time, given that he was getting elected in Adelaide, which has a city that has a heavy Greek and Cypriot base, his views on the Cyprus problem were very different than those that he's promoting today. But that's, of course, for history to decide some other day. Anyway, as it happened in previous rounds of UN-sponsored talks since 1975, the burden of concessions has fallen on the Greek Cypriots without any Turkish reciprocity. And I want to emphasize the words Turkish reciprocity because the leadership of the Turkish Cypriot community, whether under Rauf Demirtaş, Mr. Talat or Mr. Eroglu, has failed to present its own proposals for the so-called reunification of Cyprus. Instead, Turkish Cypriot leaders have admitted that their negotiating proposals have been drafted and approved by Ankara. The accumulation of Greek Cypriot negotiating errors, and there are many, includes but is not limited to 1. The acceptance of the so-called bizonal, bicommunal federation as the basis for the resolution of the Cyprus problem, without a clear understanding of what these abstract constitutional terms entailed. Second, the failure to demand zero-based negotiations, even though Turkey repeatedly changed the basis for these talks. You know, the talks would start, they would fail, then the US and Britain would come back and say, why don't you go back again, give them something new, make one more concession, we'll get them to the negotiating table. And the history, of course, repeated itself. This is the salamization of the Cyprus problem. You know how you take a big piece of salami and you keep slicing it? Now we're left with a tail, the very end of the salami. The salamization of the Cyprus problem.
Στη συνέχεια, ο Dr. Klearchos Kyriakidis μίλησε για το δίκαιο, την ηθική και τις αντιφάσεις που αφορούν το κυπριακό ζήτημα. Ας παρακολουθήσουμε ένα απόσπασμα από την ομιλία του.
The title of my contribution is The Rule of Law Vacuum, Ethical Deficit and Contradictions at the Core of the Cyprus Question. The phrase the rule of law deficit was used by the Secretary General of the United Nations without expressly referring to Cyprus when he referred to the rule of law vacuum as a concept which was evident in so many post-conflict societies. The rule of law is a principle of cardinal constitutional importance which lies at the very heart of the Commonwealth and the European Union, of which the Republic forms part. It is also a cardinal principle of the United Nations. Ethics is a concept which owes its philosophical origins to the great book of that name by Aristotle. And Aristotle hovers large in the story of Cyprus. One of the points he makes in his other great book, Politics, is that a constitution can easily be drafted and it can quite easily last for a day or two. The problem is that constitutions have a tendency to fall down, and the objective of any constitution-making process should be to ensure that a constitution lasts beyond the first day or two of its existence. Contradictions at the core of the Cyprus question will become evident as my talk proceeds. I want to do two things in the limited time I have available. The first thing to do is to outline some salient points of history and principles of law which govern the and relate to the Cyprus question. And secondly, I want to zoom in on the origins, perceived rationale for, and risks associated with these twin concepts, bicommunalism and bizonalism. My central argument is that both of these concepts are anachronistic, philosophically unsound, morally dubious, and legally questionable. Let's begin now with a little bit of history, which you should hopefully be familiar with. Actually, I'll come back to that later. The history of Cyprus, of course, goes back into antiquity, but the starting point for the modern era is, of course, the Zurich-London agreements, which were effectively imposed upon Cyprus as a non-negotiable precondition of partial decolonization and independence. And remember that the Republic of Cyprus came into being subject to the terms of various treaties which gave rights to two of the former imperial rulers of Cyprus, Turkey and the United Kingdom, together with Greece. But what I want to zoom in on now is the concept of bicommunalism, because the 1960 Constitution, which was effectively imposed on the Republic, was predicated on bicommunal lines. So the bicommunal element of the bicommunal bizonal mantra owes its origins in the modern era to 1960, although it owes its historical origins to the Ottoman imperial era. Bicommunalism is an Ottoman constitutional concept. I'll say a little bit more about that later. But it's very important at the very outset that we identify those core principles. This is a map that's drawn from the official website of the United Kingdom Ministry of Defence. It's in the public domain. It's Crown copyright material. And you will notice from the map that the United Kingdom does not regard the Republic of Cyprus as de jure partitioned. It regards it as a unitary state, as indeed it is under the 1960 arrangements. The United Kingdom, as we know, asserts sovereignty over two sovereign base areas and regards the island of Cyprus very much as a British base. And Prince Harry returned from Afghanistan via Cyprus earlier this week. The operations in Afghanistan and possibly the discrete ones in relation to Syria are using Cyprus, one suspects. But that's very important by way of background. So the Republic of Cyprus did not come into being as an independent sovereign state in the normal circumstances one finds in Europe. It came into existence subject to concrete, binding, although that's questionable in a moral sense, and extensive, let me rephrase that, forgive me, came into existence subject to extensive rights claimed by Greece, Turkey, and the United Kingdom. Did not come into existence free from the shackles that that other countries were free from. I'm going to move on, if I may, to the familiar history of the 60s and the 70s. The Republic did not join NATO. It chose in its wisdom to join the non-aligned movement. This exposed it to the tensions associated with the Cold War. In the 60s, we saw the intercommunal clashes, the constitutional crisis, and the acts of external interference, which marred the early years of the Republic's existence. And as a consequence of the activities, it must be said, of paramilitary organisations from all the communities in Cyprus, or the two main communities in Cyprus, if we can use that phrase, which I'm going to later attack, the rule of law was not properly bedded down. Even though the Republic was nominally established as a democracy, the rule of law, as we understand it in the European liberal West, was not embedded. The gun prevailed to a great extent. Politicians thought they were above the law, and external actors in the region behaved as if the law didn't exist.
Εδώ να σας αναφέρουμε ότι ολόκληρο το σεμινάριο θα το παρακολουθήσετε προσεχώς στο Hellenic TV.